And welcome back. My next guest is Melvin Roy, a U.S. Army veteran. Welcome, Melvin.
Thank you, George.
You know, happy to have you here, and as our viewers know, that this is our veterans segment. I think this is actually our 43rd or 44th show that we've done since I've been town supervisor, and we always have a veterans segment. It's a local veteran that will come on the program, and we'll ask them to talk a little bit about themselves and about their service to our country. And it's really just been a wonderful opportunity to get a number of folks, to kind of talk about their service to our country. So, Melvin, thank you again for agreeing to be our veteran for this program, and maybe you could just talk to us a little bit about your background.
Okay, I was born in New York City, Manhattan, and I went to high school in the Bronx, Evander Charles, which is northeast Bronx.
Yeah, know it well.
Oh, okay, and I went to Bronx Community College, but I guess after the third semester at Bronx Community, I was getting a little restless. I had basketball scholarships, and my mother wouldn't let me take a couple of them because I was kind of shy, and she thought I might not finish school.
Where were the scholarships to?
One was the CW Post, and the other one was the Howard University in D.C. Later on, I'll tell you a couple of seconds, but I had a scholarship that I really regret not taking. Anyway, I dropped out of Bronx Community, and I enlisted in the Army. I was actually looking for a career, and I enlisted for the longest electronics program I could find, which was Nike Hercules guided missiles. We trained, I started at Fort Dix, New Jersey.
So roughly what year did you do?
That was 1961.
Okay.
And I started my basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then I went to Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, Texas. That's the Army Air Defense Center, and it's also where we had training for Army Rangers. Okay. My class finished after 42 weeks, and we were kept, a lot of people in my class were kept as instructors. So I was an instructor in electronics for a while, and then without my knowledge, I was sent to NCO Academy, the 4th Army NCO Academy. The 4th Army is Texas, Arizona, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. And I graduated second in the class, so I was given an opportunity for whatever I wanted to do. And I thought that it might be really cool to become an airborne ranger. So I did some training down there, and El Paso, which you might not know, George, is near the Franklin Mountains, and it's desert. The Franklin Mountains were famous for Cochise and Geronimo. And in fact, when I was going to El Paso, the fellow sitting next to me in the plane was coming from Chicago. He was also in the Army, and he looked out. He woke up and he thought we were crashing because on one side of the plane was El Paso, but the other side was all desert. So it looked like we were just coming down into the rocks and the desert. Anyway, I did training down there, and I had some interesting experiences.
But you did, just jumping back, so your basic training was what, 12 weeks?
8 weeks.
8 weeks, and then so you did roughly 2 months of basic training.
In New Jersey,
but then 42 weeks of another program?
Yes.
So literally you were training for
a year.
A full year.
Yes.
Wow, it's an incredible, and that was, so you were an electronics specialist, and obviously distinguished yourself because they recommended you to go for, NCO training as well. And then you went to NCO school and you got through that as number 2. So what rank did you end up as?
When I came, in 25 months I was an E5, which is the lowest form of sergeant.
Okay.
3 stripes.
Right. So you had 3 stripes. And then so let's talk about some of your experiences. When you were stationed.
Well, I guess the most exciting one was going out in the desert. They drove you out. They put like 3 teams of 2 in the back of a truck, blindfolded, and they drive you around for a couple of hours out in the desert. And you don't know where you are. They give you a canteen of water, a knife, and a compass. And you have 2 days to get back, or else they come searching for you. And remember, that was back before they used GPS and so forth, so they didn't know where the heck you were.
Right.
And they dropped us off. And what was cool was the guy who ended up later on being my ranger buddy, Jimmy Sweat. Jimmy was truly a country boy from Louisiana. And we got out, and he looked around. We started walking. And he said, Roy. I had to get used to being called Roy in the military. They don't use your first name, even people who know you for 2 or 3 years. Anyway, he said, we passed those rocks before. And they just look like rocks to me. But anyway, so we kept going, and we got back within 2.5 hours. And they started questioning the people who took us out. Were they blindfolded? Was the truck down? Yeah, everything was okay. So they didn't know what to do with us. So they told us, well, you know, go do whatever you want to do for 2 days and then come back when the other people come.
And did the other groups, they took them the whole time, or
there were a couple of people who they had to send out searching for them.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of people were dehydrated.
Wow.
Because the canteen wasn't enough for them, you know, 1 canteen a person.
Yeah.
And they were out there for a few days. Yeah.
How on earth, in God's name, did you get back in 2.5 hours? That's crazy. I mean,
I was with someone who who grew up in the outdoors, and he recognized landmarks and things. And in the desert, I mean, he picked out rocks and little cactus formations. And he said, you know, we passed that already. He looked at the compass. We know we're going in the right direction. And we went in circles for about half an hour. And he said, no, this is the way to go. And we found out that what they did was when they drove us out, they drove in circles. They didn't just go, you know, 2 hours in one direction.
Right.
And so we got back very quickly.
Wow, that's incredible. So you were trained. You went for ranger training. So, how long did you stay in the Army? What were
I just stayed in for 3 years.
3 years?
I wanted to make a career, and one of the problems was I knew that I always wanted to get married and have a family. I was from a single-parent family, and I'm an only child. And I thought the greatest thing in the world would be to have a home like my aunt had in Westchester, a nice single-family home, garage, a wife, and 2 children. That was my dream, okay? And one of the people that I met while I was playing basketball in the Army for Fort Bliss, his father was a lieutenant colonel. And he was in charge of some of our training. And one of the things I found out, when I used to play ball with this kid, and he was like a year younger than me. And he had been to 5 different high schools because his father moved around. And when they went, in those days, you weren't allowed to take your family to Greece. So when they went to Greece, his family stayed back. And I didn't think I wanted that if I was going to have a family. So I left after 3 years.
Okay.
I left in 1964.
Right. And tell me a little bit about what you did next. Where did your life take you?
I had met a young lady who grew up in Rockland County. I didn't know where Rockland County was. In fact, when she told me, I met her at a party, a New Year's Eve party when I was still in the Army in Yonkers at a cousin's house. And she said, yeah, just right across the Tappan Zee Bridge. And the way she said it, I was embarrassed to say I'd never heard of the Tappan Zee Bridge. So I didn't know where that was. And at any rate, we got together and we ended up getting married. After a couple of years, when I came out of the service, I went to Chase. It was Chase Manhattan then. And I started on the night shift as a computer operator. And I worked my way up to second vice president before I left. And before I left, one of the people that I had helped had a friend who was a dean at Pace University. And they knew I hadn't finished school. And I came from a a family who was a Jamaican West Indian background, and no matter what I did, if I didn't get my education, I wasn't successful. They loved me. They were happy with the fact that I became a second vice president in a major bank, but I hadn't made it until I went to school. So I had an interview at Pace, and Chase paid for me to go to an MBA program where I did a double. I got my undergraduate and my MBA in the same 3-year time frame.
Oh, wow.
So it was, they gave me one Friday every 2 weeks, and I had to give up a Saturday. So I went, 2 full days a week. That was considered the second best program they had. The first best was Columbia had a program where they gave you every Friday off, but it wasn't an MBA. It was a master's degree, but it wasn't an MBA. So I went to Pace, and when I finished with Pace, by that time, we had moved up to South Nyack. My wife went to Nyack High School, graduated from there. Then she had a Regent Scholarship, went to Syracuse, and she worked at the old Letterly Labs, and she was a bacteriologist. And my 2 children were born in Jersey City, but we came up when my son was only 3 months, and my daughter was a year. So they went to Nyack. And what was interesting for me about being in a smaller town was my children had the same teachers that my wife had. And the experience was really good. And I really enjoyed being in Rockland County. It was fun. I was going to tell you, I don't know if I have time to talk 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
But when I was leaving the service, the one thing I kind of regret, and I don't regret, and I'll be very brief with it, I played basketball at Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss had about 12,000 soldiers there. And we were right next to Texas Western College, which is now the University of Texas at El Paso. And we used to play some of the freshman games before the major game. And what we would do is we would pick the games that we wanted. When a big star was coming for the major game, we wanted to get in free, so we would play that game. Anyway, Don Haskins, who was the coach then, sent one of the players that I knew very well, Nolan Richardson, who ended up being the coach of the University of Arkansas. He was the first black coach there, and he won the NCAA championship. Anyway, he came to my room right before I left, and he said, "Haskins wants you to have a full scholarship." And I said, "You know what, it's March the 6th, I'm getting married March the 14th, and I don't know if I want to come back." So I didn't take it. And he said, "Well, you're going to start on the team, you know that. And you know that some of the guys on the team, and a lot of them were from the Bronx, who were on that team that won the national championship." So we get home, I get married, we're going to a dance, and we go to pick up a couple that are friends of ours, and we're watching some of the game before we go. The team beat Kentucky for the national championship. They did some TV, they have a movie out about it, starring Lucas, I think is playing Don Haskins. Anyway, I would have started on that team.
You would have been famous. You would have been even more famous. You would have been in a movie.
My best friend, who was the best player on our high school team, told me, he said, "You would have been in the NBA."
You probably would have been. Yeah.
Even for a year or two. And you could have played in Europe. But at any rate, I probably would not have had my children. My daughter graduated from Tufts and then from BU Law School. She's now working at Rockland Community. And my son Michael is taking a master's degree online, but he works here in the county. He's been working, I can't even think of the name. It used to be St. Agatha's.
Oh, sure, New York Foundling. Yeah.
Thank you, New York Foundling. Yes,
yeah.
He's been working there for 25 years.
Wow.
And he's doing well. So I really, I'm doing pretty well. For a while, I was being a hermit. I had stopped doing some things. I had stopped being super active in my church. I had been the chairman of the finance committee, and I was on the trustee board, Pilgrim Baptist Church in Nyack. And in my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, I had sort of stopped going. And my wife kind of said, you know, we really need a treasurer. She was at the time the vice president of Congress 2 Senior Citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know, I had gone on a couple of bus rides with them. And I enjoyed the people. They were very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting in this day and age, because I'm the only African American in the club.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, of course. And I was accepted very well. I have people that I consider very good friends. A lot of ex-policemen, ex-firemen, so, as the Congress, you know.
Yeah, it's a great club.
Anyway, so I came in the club as the treasurer. Okay, because I was really just traveling with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually joined the club and I was the treasurer, and now I'm in my second year as a treasurer. She's now the president of the club.
Mm.
And the club is doing well, and I'm really happy that I joined because I'm meeting a lot of people. And you know what's interesting? I'm 77 years old, and sometimes when you pass a certain age, you start thinking that, and especially now, most of my best friends have died.
Mm.
And a lot of the people I knew from the military have
Yeah.
died. So, you know, you sit around saying, gee, you know, I guess it's all over.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not walking that well, and sometimes you feel like very down. You know, I used to be a Division I class athlete and then
Mm-hmm.
in the military. And when I got in the club and I meet a lot of people who are active, I've become more active.
Well, that's great.
And, you know, it really is an enjoyment. You know, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but
Yeah, go ahead.
even to talking to you as a town supervisor, you've come when we were sworn in,
Mm-hmm.
and you've come to speak at the club. The person who came with you, I gave her a problem that I was having, and within one day, somebody came and helped out.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we needed more, they called to follow up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I spoke to you, you know, it was, I don't know if this happens in a big city,
Yeah.
but it happened here, and
Well,
I really
appreciate
appreciate it. And it's good to be in
it's
an
good.
area where, you know, people respect you and you can respect other people and
Mhm.
things get along.
No,
But yes.
Absolutely true. Clarkstown it's a special place. I was born in Nyack Hospital, raised here, lived here, you know, my whole life, and you know, sometimes I still kind of pinch myself and say, wow, I can't believe I'm actually the supervisor of my hometown. And you know, it's a special place. We've got really good staff. I've got a good staff. And that's what local government's supposed to be about. If there's a problem, fix it. You know, do what you can to fix it. If you can't fix it, at least try and get the person to somebody that can fix it. And that's what we try and practice through my office. You're also involved with the American Legion, correct?
I'm a member.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say involved, even though they're trying to get me involved. They're
Yeah.
sending me a lot of literature, and I've met a few people who, you know, I met somebody the other day who saw my hat and said, "Oh, are you?" And then we talked, and he's active in a chapter,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to get me in a couple of chapters, and I haven't done it yet.
No.
I was also in the NRA.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm probably still in, but I don't think I'm going to renew.
Right.
I'm definitely going to renew in the American Legion because they do good work.
Right.
I just don't know how active I want to be. I
Yeah.
do send money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have a lot of causes.
Yeah, they
you
do.
know.
They do.
And
But you've got your activity now with your wife in the senior club at Congress too, which
Yes.
and that's a great club. You know, very active group of people over there. And I enjoy getting around to the clubs and talking to the clubs, kind of giving a little bit of an update and just taking people's comments. And you're right. Every time I go to the senior clubs, I bring along either Erica or Lauren from my office, and they take detailed notes. And I'll usually walk out with, you know, the least amount would be 3 or 4, and the most I could have, you know, 15 or 18 different things that people are asking us to help with. So really just a great opportunity to kind of connect with the seniors.
yes,
But-
it was Lauren who came with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, Lauren,
Yeah.
wonderful addition to our office. Got her kind of fresh out of college, and she's been with us now for 2 years. But Melvin, I want to thank you. We're about out of time.
Okay.
I want to thank you for, first and foremost, your service to our country. And the NBA's loss, was your wife's gain and your family's gain. But you were just such an engaging guest as well. So I really want to thank you for being a wonderful guest, but more importantly for your service to our country as a member of the United States military, the U.S. Army, in 61 to 64. And then, your continued service now as a retiree. Those senior clubs, they rely on the officers to keep them going. So I know you got a lot out of it, but by your service there, and being a treasurer is a pretty thankless job, especially, with your wife as the boss too. So now that's an added twist. But thank you for that service as well.
Thank you.
Great. And we'll be right back. Stay tuned.